Now you just said earlier that that the giant skeletons have 6 fingers and 6 toes on them.
That's what a lot of the reports say. The Bible talks about that, and there are drawings of these guys that show the same thing, and you have to wonder why would they have 6 fingers and 6 toes, and why 2 rows of front teeth? Or is everybody that has that bad? Well, no, because there are people today that are normal to have 6 toes and 6 fingers in some cases.
Yeah, but
They're
they're not 22 feet
No,
tall
they're
or
not
something
22
like
feet
that.
tall. Yeah, and we don't know that those. Sometimes that's just. It may be that is a Siamese twin. You get Siamese twins. Sometimes all you'll have is like they'll have 2 heads coming out of one body, or one leg coming out of a normal body. That's just 2 Siamese. That's twins that never separated enough. It could be that people with 6 toes and 6 fingers are just they're an actual twin, and all they have of the other person is that one finger. But I don't know. I'm sure that's been tested. But it doesn't mean those people are evil. I used to know a really sweet girl who had 6 toes, and she was a very nice person. She was part Indian, so I don't know what that means, but I know the Indians used to the Indians as we know them, like the Comanches, Cherokees, Apaches, and so on. A lot of those, at least their ancestors, had to deal with these giant people, and we don't know what color those giant men were in some cases, but they were always trouble with them. They were always having problems with them. So big people today generally tend to be nicer, more gentle. So why would the big ones in the past be so bad if being big made you bad? Because apparently being big doesn't. There's some of the reason they were so bad.
Well, before I answer that, I found second book of Samuel, chapter 21, verses 15 to 22, and it says, "And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes,
Right,
420 in number, and he also was born to the giant."
right.
So there, that is right there.
Yeah.
Well, from what my understanding from reading about the wickedness is that these, according to the Bible, these giants are the offspring of the fallen angels, basically, that came down and found the women fair from Genesis 6:4, and basically had intercourse with human women, and this genetic aberration was giantism, basically. And because these fallen angels were basically wicked, that nature got passed on to their offspring. So that's kind of the biblical background of why the giants would be evil, because when Joshua and 12 other people from the tribe were sent by Moses to look at the promised land, they had to sneak into it basically, and they looked through some grapes or something like that, and they could see how big the giants were, and
Hmm.
they were terrified, and they cut down some of the grapes, and it took 2 men to carry like a bunch of grapes back
Hmm.
on a pole.
Yeah.
That's how heavy they were, and they told basically Moses that we don't want to move there,
Hmm.
and 10 of them voted no, let's get out of here, and Joshua and somebody else was like, I think we can beat the Giants, which sounds
Hmm.
insane to me, because I would
Yeah.
never like walk up and like smack Shaquille O'Neal in the face. So I can imagine if they're like 20 feet tall, how terrifying that must have been.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had the faith of God that God would fight their battles for them, and He did. But uh, generally speaking, there really are 3 views of why there were giants. One is they're just naturally big. They're just naturally big people, and there's no spiritual thing involved. The other, of course, is that they were fathered by fallen angels, and that would, of course, be a really strange combination that one could expect maybe giantism and evil would come from it, and these extra digits, but perhaps. The other thing is, I think a lot of the paleontologists and people, archaeologists that work on all this stuff, they realize there really are giant skeletons, and they're so big they can't account for them. So they have opted for one of the things they used to condemn and laugh at as having come here from outer space. They're aliens, you
Mm-hmm.
know. In a sense, a fallen angel, if he came from heaven, if he rebelled from God, fell to the earth, he'd be he'd be an alien, you know.
I agree.
But paleontologists can't have anything being spiritual. So, but they're leaning more towards aliens and outer space beings and space traveling crafts and all that stuff. And they used to poo-poo all that. But what choice have they got? If they say they're fathered by angels, then they can't have that because that agree with the Bible, or that would mean they were spiritual beings. If they're just really, really big people, they can't explain that because most big people today are ill. They can barely walk. You know, guys that are 8, 9 feet tall today can barely walk up the steps. They're in very bad shape. And that's not what you're
Right.
looking at in those men of renown.
I mean, when you look at those skeletons, these bones that they uncover, I mean, most of these people that are giants today, you could see some type of deformity in their bone structure somewhere. So that should be apparent in the ancient bones that they're uncovering. But I don't think that they have. I mean, from what what I've seen, the giant bones just seem like healthy bones.
Yeah, as far as I know, all the giant specimens are obviously they were called men of renown because they were great fighters. You know, these were athletes. Um, the giants today, most like that guy in Russia and the gal over in Japan or China, they're some form of acromegalia or something like that, and they just have a lot of physical problems. Well, that's not what those guys in the Middle East were. They were big warriors, powerful warriors.
So how did mankind back then beat them? I mean, are we to believe that like the Lord just blessed them and that's in battle? I mean, I know that David picked out 5 smooth stones from a stream and the first one sunk deep into Goliath's head and that killed him. But it looked like they had after the flood, they were still around. They had up to like 400 plus years to build their numbers up. I mean, it seemed there's got to be more to the story. I mean, they totally disappeared.
Well, apparently David wiped out the last of the giants in his area, and that part of the world. uh, there are apparently some men still 10, 12 feet tall over in Patagonia 500 years ago, and into the 1840s, men that were still 8 feet tall. But it could be that the giants, you know, the weather changed. Maybe the giants couldn't get enough food. Could be that the Israelites, of course, if God fought the battles for them, then we don't know how they prevailed against those really, really big men. But they did. It's possible they shot poisoned arrows into them, you know, and wouldn't have to have a very big arrow to go into a large leg that would kill
Hmm.
the man eventually or whatever. We don't know. They may have ran up to them and hit them on the legs before they could get their mace out against the Israelites. We don't know. It didn't go into great detail on that. But Goliath, you know, he was what, 10 or 11 feet tall,
And
and
he was 13 feet tall.
yeah, he was, you know, certainly that tall or taller. Kind of depends on how you figure the cubit. You know, there's the
Right.
royal cubit and the regular cubit, so either one may have been in play. But that stone, now he had thrown hundreds of thousands of rocks, so he knew what he could do. He knew how hard that thing would go, and he probably knew that if he hit somebody right between the eyes, that you're probably going to kill them. You know, because it
Hmm.
pushes those bones up into the brain. And people speculate as to why did he have 5 stones? Because Goliath had 4 brothers. Probably David was willing to take those all on too. And they could see that they were outmatched. And I mean, it's very possible that the Israelites shot all those guys in the eyes, blinded them.
Hmm.
You know, hit them with slingshots, put their eyes out, shot them with arrows. Uh, we don't know.
Yeah, I guess you do what you have to do when you have to survive. So
Yeah.
you do anything. I just think of like guerrilla warfare because you're not going to go head to head. I mean, I'm gonna get you when it's dark in your sleep.
Yeah. Hmm.